Convicted felon Donald Trump's main lawyer in the New York case decided to go on a media tour tonight. Perhaps he felt the need to explain himself after losing one of the biggest cases in the history of our country. Feeling confident, he went on CNN to talk to Caitlin Collins, where she asked him a few key questions that we've all been wondering. Needless to say, things fell apart quickly. Wait until you see this man fall flat on his face. Why he thought it would be a good idea to go on her show tonight is beyond me. He should have stuck to his safe space where he can do no harm. Before jousting with Caitlin Collins over on CNN, Todd Blanche decided to visit friendly territory for a warm-up. Jesse Waters welcomed Todd to his show and had a bunch of softball questions for him. This gave Todd a chance to show his loyalty to Trump and make sure the MAGA crowd knew it wasn't his fault what happened.
When you see that happen to him, and I was standing right next to him today, and it's heartbreaking because they're laughing at a man, at a father, at a husband, at a grandfather, and at somebody who's running for president and looks like will win. That's something that people should be troubled with.
Okay, first of all, Donald Trump is not most likely going to win. The polls this far out mean nothing. People are barely paying attention to the election and have no idea what's going on. The polls have shown Democrats down across the board for years, yet somehow we keep winning. And 20% of the GOP keeps voting for Nikki Haley in primaries, even though she dropped out 3 months ago. Secondly, spare me on the Trump is a husband, father, etc. nonsense. Melania and most of his family were nowhere to be found during the trial. You'd think she'd be by her partner's side during his criminal trial with his freedom at stake, especially if you believe Donald Trump's version of the story, in which he never even slept with Stormy Daniels. But Melania's absence was quite notable. I'm taking a wild guess here, but I'm willing to bet Melania wasn't exactly disappointed in today's results, if you know what I mean. Next up, Todd was asked how involved Trump was in the decision-making for his defense.
How involved was Donald Trump in his own defense?
I mean, what do you think? I mean, very involved. And he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He jokingly said to us a lot, sometimes he wanted to be the litigator. You know, he wanted to be the one that was actually arguing because he's a smart guy and he knows what he's doing. We made every decision together.
Well, that explains a lot. That was your first mistake, Todd. Maybe you shouldn't have let him be that involved.
Are you satisfied with jury selection? And was the former president involved in that in any way?
I mean, very much involved. He was right there with the whole team talking about the potential jurors. Look, was I satisfied? We put a motion in because we said we could not get a fair jury in Manhattan. And that's not I'm not being disparaging to the jurors, man. They were great. They showed up on time every day. They were committed. They paid attention. But we're in a situation where we had a very limited number of people we could strike. And most of the folks, overwhelming number of folks, had a very strong opinion of President Trump, and it wasn't positive.
Wow, again, placing some of the blame on Donald Trump. You're supposed to take the blame, man. Did you not get the memo? Trump is supposed to be perfect. How could he pick jurors that find him guilty? And saying the jurors were great is probably not going to go over well with the MAGA crowd. After throwing Trump under the bus on Fox News, Todd Blanche decided to get roughed up by Caitlin Collins over on CNN. Caitlin just had some simple questions for him that we've all been wondering, and poor Todd crumbled instantly.
Why did Donald Trump not ultimately take the stand here?
Well, that's a very personal question to him and to me, honestly. And it's a very difficult question. Of course he wanted to testify, and I don't say that because that's what he has said. He wanted to get his story out. I think the judge had made some decisions before the trial or the day of the trial started about what would be allowed to be asked of him by the prosecutors if he took the stand. And some of those questions were really complicated to answer because there's still appeals going on, and so there's a lot of decision points that go into whether somebody testifies. Ultimately, it's his decision, and he listened to us, and he relied on our counsel, and he reached a decision that he thought was right, which I very much agreed with.
So that means your counsel was for him to not take the stand.
I'm not going to tell you what my counsel was.
Well, you said he relied on counsel and he went with that decision and he didn't take the stand.
But ultimately, it was his decision, and I never say, and I think colleagues and folks that you have on here hopefully agree with me, I never say to somebody, don't take the stand, right? That's their decision, and that's a decision that they have to make. But I want them to have they want them to know what will happen on the good and the bad if they do take the stand.
So no regrets on him not taking the stand?
Look, the verdict came down a couple hours ago. I don't know if I have any regrets about anything yet. I'm still thinking things through, and I think so is he, and so is everybody else around him. But at this point, I don't think that there was a conviction because he did not take the stand.
No regrets after losing the biggest case of your life? There's nothing you could have done differently. That is just wild to me. Tough guy Donald Trump told us numerous times that he would gladly take the stand and defend himself. But when push came to shove, he chickened out like he always does. Trump could have disputed everything said by Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen under oath, but he chose to take naps at the defense table instead. But this next question by Caitlin was something I've been wondering about this whole trial.
When he was leaving, one thing he brought up were the witnesses who were not called. And he was saying that there could have been witnesses that would have helped make the case. We never saw Keith Schiller, Alan Weisselberg, some key figures here who got brought up a lot. Why didn't the defense call any of these witnesses?
Well, because we happen to live in America and we don't have the burden of proof. And so that's not the point. That's a question that is a loaded question that should not be asked of a defense attorney or a defendant. The question that we asked the jury, and they ultimately obviously got passed, is why the prosecution didn't call those witnesses, right? You, as a defense attorney, you don't go into a case saying, I'm going to fill the holes of the prosecution, right? And Keith Schiller and some of the other witnesses that were not ultimately called, in our view, should have been called by the prosecution, and we asked the jury to take a hard look at that. I don't know whether they did or not, but they convicted.
Did Todd Blanche just blame America for Donald Trump losing his criminal trial? Trump could have called his former bodyguard Keith Schiller as a witness to refute Stormy Daniels' testimony. Remember, Stormy said she communicated with Trump through Keith, and Keith was stationed at the hotel room door the whole time she was with Donald Trump. If Trump didn't sleep with her, surely Keith could have cleared that up. Or what about Alan Weisselberg, the Trump org CFO who worked with Michael Cohen to execute the deal to pay Stormy Daniels and falsify business records to repay Michael? He's currently in prison serving a second sentence for perjury related to lying on behalf of Trump. Surely he could have exonerated Trump if Michael Cohen made the whole thing up. It's painfully obvious why Trump didn't call any of these people as defense witnesses. They would have been destroyed by the prosecution under cross-examination. It has been a wild day with Trump being convicted on all 34 counts. He will now have to live the rest of his life as a convicted felon. A lot of people have been frustrated that he went this long without justice catching up to him, me included. But today was a good day for restoring people's faith in the system. Big props to Alvin Bragg and the rest of his team. They took on a case that no one else wanted and got the best result possible.